folks. Today I was given the opportunity to talk about one of the greatest lost media searches of all time. Let's see which one I was given. Oh. Huh. You know what, now that I think about it, I think I actually have somewhere else I need to be. After all, what else is there left to say about the... Okay. A Day with SpongeBob SquarePants, the movie, the unofficial mockumentary, seriously that's its full name, is one of the most infamous pieces of internet history. Its long, arduous story has already been talked about on this platform more times than I've seen my own mother's face, but despite that, it won't stop me from talking about it in my own trademark half-ass way. Ironically, even if we are speaking in regards of lost media, it technically isn't even as such. The whole thing was revealed to be bullshit, not actually existing in the first place, with some of its sources not even fully being viewed as legitimate these days, though I'm getting ahead of myself. For those of you that have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, or have completely wiped the situation from your brain, lucky you, then allow me to re-burden you with this mind-boggling tale. You see, our story begins sometime before November of 2011, when the film was put on Amazon for pre-orders. The film was slated to be released on November 22nd of that year. The following is its infamous premise. In this mockumentary, SpongeBob lives above ground like all Hollywood superstars. Afraid that SpongeBob is becoming old news, his boss runs a contest called Spend a Day with SpongeBob. The contest makes SpongeBob the talk of the town, as thousands of kids enter to win. The lucky winner is Seth, and he's ecstatic about his day with SpongeBob. However, the day becomes a roller coaster ride as things don't go quite the way they planned. At first, no one really saw it, and basically it flew under the radar. The first real mention of the film was from some website called thew.com. Now, there isn't too much to be said about this site other than CRZ, the author of that page, wrote a small blurb about the film stating the following. I found very little about this one. Maybe they're trying to keep it under the radar to avoid litigation. A few days after the movie supposedly released, more people were beginning to take notice of it. A local library in Jersey supposedly listed the film in their library for rent. And even users on Twitter like the infamous, or not if you're not brain rotten, the Daniel Shawn, was making tweets about the alleged film. Of course, it was only a matter of time before people like me would take notice of the film's existence and begin discussing it on places like forums, like a bunch of nerds. Okay, before you shoot me, I have a collection of N64 games, so that logic... 4chan, much like autism, is the main cause of the film's hunt in the first place. A lot of Anons were dying to see this direct-to-DVD piece of shit come to fruition, and since pre-orders were eventually cancelled, they wouldn't rest until it was found. This was when Innovision Films, the supposed production company for the film, was discovered to actually be a production company under the title Regal Films. I wonder why they went under a different alias. Anons would soon visit Regal's website to find a treasure trove of questionable, lack of a better term, malfeasance. For starters, most folks who would visit the site with the latest antivirus software would tell them to get the hell off the website. This was because, supposedly, Regal had a Trojan floating on there. Now, if that wasn't sketchy enough for you, then how about when Anons found the address to their headquarters, located on their site by the way, actually led them to a food court in Atlanta? Dude. What? This is just some of the many sketchy things that people discovered about the company. Some even question if they made movies at all.
Foreshadowing.
But apparently this technically is the case, if you want to call this a movie.
Steve Jobs is probably going to be considered after some of the greatest inventors of America.
This is Steve Jobs, Consciously Genius, one of Regal's few productions that actually made it to the finish line. Something we will get back to is the man who directed the film, Jason Boritz. He, alongside another infamous man involved in the search, Lorenzo Hawley, were both directly linked to Regal in their many productions. In fact, it was Lorenzo specifically who would eventually become a key part in the overall search. But I'm getting ahead of myself. With all this information in mind, you'd think with all these names, it shouldn't be too hard to find a couple of emails and get in contact with these individuals, right? Well, before any of this concrete information was discovered, trolling, like previously mentioned, was rampant on the thread. You couldn't go an hour without some bonehead claiming they had legitimate evidence or footage of the film, only to link something like this. Needless to say, the thread on 4chan became a shitfest. That was until one of the Anons of the thread would push everything over to the Lost Media Wiki forums. The Lost Media Wiki Forums was where most of the investigation has been archived. I spoke with L Supersonic Q during my research as he was a veteran of the film's hunt. Apparently, the original Lost Media archive was where the Lost Media community first began their investigation for the film. But I can't find any archives of that anywhere, and frankly, I'd rather stick my balls in an anthill than go near the archive, so we'll focus on the Lost Media Wiki Forums thread for this video specifically. Most of the search from here on out was conducted there anyway. Now, given that this was the place where most of the search was conducted from here on out, you're probably wondering how long the thread—
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, 80 pages. 80 pages of actual torture. 80 pages of people yapping about a movie that, for all intents and purposes, looked like this. Let me tell you, you'd have to be some kind of brain-dead jackass sucker to actually sit through 80 pages of this shit, am I right? Me being the stubborn bastard I am, decided that I had no other choice than to take the plunge into the depths of these very forums. And folks, I shit you not, this trek took me nearly 2 days to finish. This is the life I've chosen. I probably should also mention that there was a Skype group, but according to L, not much was really done there other than contacting former Regal employees. However, the log to that has since been lost according to him, so I wasn't able to dig anything up from that point in the search. But I'll take L's word for it. I'd also rather spray boiling Clorox in my eyes than read any more SpongeBob chat logs, so this was a win in my book. Now, you're probably wondering what I found during my 2-day-long Lost Media Forum excavation. A whole lot of nothing. Alright, I don't want to sell it that short, but there was some interesting stuff to be found there. What were those interesting things, you might be asking? Well, do you remember Lorenzo Hawley? Yeah, I wish I didn't. Well, as it turns out, during the hunt, most of the time was spent trying to track him down specifically. Really anyone attached to Regal at that point. Jason, Lorenzo, Jonathan, it's not really important, don't worry about it. They were all very sought after individuals, as it really came down to them being the only people that would know anything about the production at all. MTV, the supposed distributors for the film, along with the Steve Jobs documentary, said that the movie never finished production and that promotional materials might exist, but they weren't too sure themselves. But anyway, back to Lorenzo. It turns out the guy was having an Alvin and the Chipmunks adventure around the world. He mined for gold in Africa, had a clothesline in Asia, and apparently came back to the US to sell organic wheatgrass in Georgia. The man is a real-life Stanley Pines to the point to where he'd become incredibly difficult to get in contact with. Most of, if not all of his phone numbers and emails were cut off and disconnected. Now, if you ask me, unless you're trying to evade some sort of legal consequence, I don't see much of a reason for him to have a disconnected number or email, let alone 5 or 6. It even came down to someone getting in contact with a peer of Lorenzo's asking if they could pass on a message to him, specifically asking about his time in the entertainment industry, only for that peer to come back to inform us that Lorenzo said for them to never contact us again.
Fuck off.
The same goes for Jason Boritz. Despite him being a producer and director for the Steve Jobs film, he was incredibly difficult to get a hold of. And even when we finally did reach Jason, he went postal and screamed at the individual calling him, demanding that he never speak to him ever again. I'm beginning to understand why so many people were obsessed with this film. After about page 60 of the thread, it felt like the search became more about hunting the Zodiac Killer than it looking for a goofy SpongeBob bootleg. Overall, the thread, much like the former on 4chan, was utter chaos, especially after the whole Jason fiasco happened. However, despite all of that, things took a turn for the better? A search must eventually come to its end. Around the time the search was being shifted to the private Skype chat, and the place where Jason had his crash out, a user simply going by William was able to get a hold of Lorenzo. He did this by tricking him into thinking he was an investor interested in Foy Foods, his wheatgrass company.
Hello?
Yes, is this a number for Yay or Get?
Yes, who's calling?
I'm a businessman. I was wondering if I could speak to Lorenzo Hawley.
Now, after some back and forth with Lorenzo, he finally came clean about the film.
The movie was out for a short period of time. However, we decided to retract it, and we're thinking about releasing it later this year. A better version of it.
This is just the kind of back and forth the Skype chat had with Lorenzo Hawley. He didn't really seem to know much of anything about the film more than we did. In fact, whenever William was able to get in touch with him, when asked about SpongeBob, Lorenzo acted like he had no idea what the hell he was even talking about.
I'm in a little group that's looking for one of your lost pictures, a day with SpongeBob SquarePants. We'd be willing to pay for a copy of it.
SpongeBob SquarePants?
Yeah.
Though eventually he did promise that a crowdfunding campaign for the updated version of the film would happen. Of course, it never did, and folks began to question Lorenzo's legitimacy. But the question I'm left asking is, why? Why did the group just shovel the shit Lorenzo gave them? After calling Lorenzo about 4 or 5 times, he eventually got fed up with our asses, and he sent us directly to the source of the film. I don't know why he didn't do that sooner, but okay, whatever. Enter Mr. Orange, an individual who supposedly created A Day with SpongeBob.
I had an idea for a film. I wanted to do something that was for kids and adults. It was funny, but at the same time had some heartfelt moments and somewhat of a message, you know, kind of like the movies I used to watch growing up, like a John Hughes film of some sort.
He also claimed that Regal was just a distributor for the film, and didn't actually have any involvement with the production of A Day with SpongeBob.
Regal Films actually is just a distribution company. It's just like MVD. Different people or editors or producers, they make films, you know, low quality, low budget, and they need somebody to sell it, so Regal distributes them.
Despite everything Mr. Orange told the search team, they believed it, and Mr. Orange told them that the film would launch as a Kickstarter later in the year. Yet we never heard back from him in the movie's progress since. No surprise. You'd think if you were this small-time indie filmmaker and your film gets this massive cult following online, people are doing everything they can to get a hold of it, to find it, you'd milk it for all it's worth, but I guess not? None of this adds up, especially whenever you consider the strange script Mr. Orange sent us before he faded away. This was our consolation prize for nearly 4 years of... Was it 4 years? Yeah. This was our consolation prize for nearly 4 years of hunting. So, where are we now? Well, several years have passed since Mr. Orange fell off the face of the earth, and many people wonder what happened to him after he came forward. I think it's pretty safe to say what happened. Mr. Orange wasn't real. He was simply an op for Lorenzo to get people off his trail. For all we know, he was just some friend he paid to record a few lines explaining that he was the real creator of the film and assure people looking for it that it would come out eventually. Now, of course, this never happened, but it's funny to look back and see this whole situation unfold and actually see people buy into this supposed Mr. Orange's bullshit. However, I'm left sitting here, reading through these desolate forum threads, and I'm once again asking myself, why? This is like the fourth why during this entire investigation. People back then were gullible as bro. But why would Lorenzo go through all of this trouble to cover his ass for a film for all intents and purposes does not exist? I mean, why not just be honest with ongoing mysteries and the rest of the search and all the people looking for it? Well, there might be a reason for that. Now, throughout this video, I've been rather coy about Regal's true intentions. What was the purpose of their studio? It obviously wasn't making movies, since only one of them can actually be viewed online. Hell, most of their films are either slideshows or pre-orders that just never happened. So what's going on here? Well, a lot of people speculated throughout this investigation that Regal was potentially some kind of money laundering front. While this is only an alleged claim, most of their films listed were pre-orders only, their supposed headquarters was located in a food court, and any mention of Regal's name from any of their supposed elusive employees was met with either a hang-up or, well, that, yeah. Not to mention a Kickstarter campaign for a project both Lorenzo, Jason, and the rest of Regal were a part of, a film titled Good Luck. Despite the page barely having any information about the actual film itself, the entire campaign was able to gross over $20,000 from only 12 backers. While this seems like pretty damning information, it's only up in the air if any of this actually holds any water. For all we know, Regal was just a studio that wasn't very good at making business decisions and didn't know how to properly run itself, which would explain why most of their films were either slideshows or just didn't come out at all. Remember when this video was about SpongeBob SquarePants? I think my favorite thing about this search is the simple fact that at the end of the day, it wasn't really a lost media case, if we're honest with ourselves here. While it may have started out as an oddball hunt to track down a copy of a weird bootleg movie, it slowly spiraled and mutated into a full-blown investigation into the seedy practices of a supposed bootleg entertainment company, if you could even call it that. While we never got to see any footage from a shitty SpongeBob movie, at least we got to see a bunch of schizophrenics and sewer mutants debate with each other for over 80 pages on a forum you've probably never even been to. Hey, it entertained me at least. I guess I just find it really funny that we never actually solved A Day with SpongeBob SquarePants. I mean, really. We were swindled into thinking we did, like we found the creator, no, not that guy, and he finally spilled the beans to all of us, but in hindsight, None of that really happened, did it? Well, they could spend another week investigating Regal and try to quote-unquote reopen the case for the film. In fact, the original vision for this video was taking another deep dive into Regal as a whole. I really don't see much of a reason to do that these days. The original search ended years ago, and all the people associated with the film and Hunt have since moved on. In fact, 2 years after the Mr. Orange scandal concluded, another thread in the Lost Media Wiki forums was created in hopes to revive the search. But, yeah, well, it didn't really go anywhere. Most of the thread consisted of people once again, arguing if the film existed or not, and or if Mr. Orange was actually being honest, because believe it or not, a lot of people genuinely believed what he was saying. So, of course, in classic Lost Media Wiki forum fashion, the moderators just locked the thread because they didn't want to deal with it. I guess they don't like when people make threads about Lost Media on their Lost Media forum. I guess. So what's my takeaway from all this, huh? What does Bones have to say about this entire internet rabbit hole? Well, my friends, if you ask me, sometimes with internet mysteries like this, it's best to leave certain cases cold. And while we may never actually know the true origins of this film or if it actually did exist or not, at least there's one thing we can glean from all of this. While the forum thread for the topic was a massive waste of everyone's time, it was very funny. Just like this video. Bye-bye.